you everyone for joining today. I'm joined by my colleagues, Kate and Tara. Welcome all. I'm here to talk about Data to Go. The general agenda is that we will start off with some context on who we are and what we do, orient you to this tool, and then have a Q&A. And if you have any questions, please feel free to toss them in chat as we go, and we'll answer them. And then we'll have a fun bingo session that's mildly competitive and send you on your way with a closing statement from Michael. So thank you all. We're a small team called Measure of America. We're based in New York, and we've been working since 2007 to study well-being and access to opportunity in the US. We're part of the nonprofit, Nonpartisan Social Science Research Council. We've done a lot of work in New York City and across the nation in rural and urban contexts. And we have three main areas of work. We develop data tools like Data to Go. And we also have a lot of work in what's called the field of youth disconnection, the people who are 16 to 24, out of school and out of work. We've been working on that topic since 2012. And we also have what we call human development reports, which is an adaptation of the UN's Human Development Index, which is a great general measure of well-being. And in fact, we just got back from Los Angeles, where we did this work in partnership with the LA County Department of Mental Health and LA City. And it's just so great to, to do this kind of work in cities across America, and that there's such a strong city user base. And that is the case for Data to Go too. These are some findings that we looked at who was using Data to Go over the last 10 years. We relaunched it last year, but first launched it in 2015. And over the course of Data to Go's life, and we've updated it, throughout this time, but over the course of Data to Go's life, over 3,500 maniacs have downloaded the entire data set. There's 35 plus offices and agencies within New York City, New York State, elected officials' offices, going from the comptroller to attorney generals and council members that have, downloaded the entire data set. 60 plus New York City area nonprofits have received technical assistance training through programs we've offered that, have this tool at its center. That's with the support of Nonprofit New York, New York Community Trust, and the Helmsley Charitable Trust. And the Helmsley Charitable Trust, supported Data to Go since the start. So we just have to, shout out to them for having supported us from 2014. This is just a sample of the uses. There's also, 8 major New York City hospital systems have used it for their community health needs assessments, and tons of NGOs, people testifying in front of city council for affordable housing, all sorts of uses. So we're hoping that this session will give you the scaffolding to use it for advocacy, for grant making, for applying for grants, and for finding out more about your communities. The tool also ended up in the Museum of the City of New York exhibit on the 2020 census, and at the Cooper Hewitt in the Smithsonian Design Museum. And one thing we're really excited about, and we just saw actually results from this 2 years ago, which was that journalists used Data to Go to inform their reporting with really striking results. That we had a partnership with The Trace, which is a newsroom focused on gun violence, and it looked at gunshot deaths in New York City, found that gunshot victims were most likely to die in southern Queens. The data revealed that there were really not that many trauma care centers there. Community advocates and elected officials, including the Queensborough president, picked up on this reporting, lobbied hard, and many years later, the result was $150 million investment from New York State and $25 million from the city to expand trauma care coverage at Jamaica Hospital. So what is Data to Go? Just to emphasize, it's free. It's supported by philanthropy. It's intuitive, easy to use. It's comprehensive, multi-sectoral, transparent, and rigorous. And that it couldn't exist without the long-term relationships we have with data partners at the city, everyone from Department of Mental Health to the office management and budget, and office of operations. There's new geographies in this latest update, 197 neighborhood tabulation areas, which are bigger than census tracts, but smaller than community districts. There's over 400 indicators in total. Over 150 of them are available at this new level, the neighborhood tabulation area level. And there's over 500,000 data points in Data2Go. Thank you to all our data partners. Just take a beat to acknowledge them, and that there's tremendous value in public data, but I think I'm preaching to the choir and that you'd all agree, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So we also developed this in the original tool with an advisory panel drawn from policymakers, thought leaders from the city, from NGOs, and from academia. So this is what you see when you go to Data2Go. There's this informational pop-up. You can read an FAQ. You can access a tutorial and story forum. You can look at case studies, or you can click out of it like I would. And then you have several windows through which you can slice and dice the data. This is the default one called Stat Explorer, which allows you to see how indicators vary across the city. And it shows this variation in a number of different ways. Bear with me while I pull up the laser pointer. All right, there it is. So you can see it on a map like so. This is all the same indicator on a histogram here, and what we call a B-swarm on the right. And one convention we use throughout the website is that darker colors represent more of whatever indicator you're seeing, and lighter colors represent less of whatever indicator you're seeing. So if the indicator is positive, like on-time high school graduation rates, a darker color is good news. If an indicator is negative, like smoking rates or cancer rates, then the darker color is a cause for concern. So when you're dipping your toe into the site, the first thing you want to do is choose the geographical level that you want to see, which is over here. You can see we've got borough, we've got community district. There's 59 of those. They're tied to community boards. Neighborhoods, like I said earlier, there's 197 of them. Or census tracts, and there's over 2,000 of those. That's the most granular data that we have in the tool. All data aren't available at all geographies, so the ones that aren't available are grayed out, like tracked here. And then we've also got, in the bottom right-hand corner, the name of the geography. And here the names come from the Department of City Planning, and so do the NTA shapes in general. And the name of the indicator you've chosen will always appear in the underneath the map. And here we've chosen the American Human Development Index. As I mentioned earlier, it's the cornerstone of our human development reports. It's a really broadly applicable, you can drill down to small geographic levels. It can be used to compare differences between demographic groups, but it's a combination of life expectancy, education indicators, and earnings indicators. And it's really helpful for waving a flag or giving you some general information about well-being in a community, which is why we have it as the first indicator you see on the tool. And then you can go to the other 400 indicators we have in the tool to understand why a neighborhood or area might not be experiencing high levels of well-being, for instance. Okay, and then you can see the same data here. And what we've chosen, this varies as you scroll. This site has an infinite scroll like TikTok, and the indicators switch out. But right now we've got what is called the B-swarm indicator, which we're crazy about. And every dot on this B-swarm represents one of New York City's 197 neighborhoods. And down here, this section will let you compare this indicator with another indicator. And it'll take you to that page. My colleague Tara will talk about that. And then there's also this export share button, which will, if you click it, bring up this dialog box, which lets you export a map and lets you export the data as an image, as an Excel file. You can share it on social or download all the data and fill out a form, and we would send you that. And this is how you can compare two indicators in the map itself. You can mouse over another one, and then the indicator you last selected will be highlighted in black. And then pink will show you the values for the area you're currently mousing over, in this case, Brooklyn Heights. And with that, I will pass it over to my colleague, Kate.
Hi, everyone. Excuse the awkward shuffle, but my name is Kate Harvey. I'm a research analyst with Measure of America, and I'll just walk you through a bit more of the Stat Explorer. So like Alex mentioned, there's a few ways to navigate. The first, of course, is the infinite scroll, but we also have these 7 menu items across the top. And then within each of those menu items, we have additional subcategories just to help you find things more easily. So when you click on a different menu item, it'll change the color of the sort of visualizations in the view. And when you click on sort of a module name or a point within the bee swarm, it'll change both the map and the histogram to reflect the color of the category that is in, and also reflect the data on the map and histogram there. So in this case, I've selected life expectancy at birth. So because that is a health indicator, both the map and the histogram appear in red. We also have education. We have a lot of data in this section that was obtained through a special data use agreement with the New York City Department of Education. Have work and wealth indicators, safety indicators, and we take a pretty encompassing view of what safety means. So it includes crime indicators, but also data on emergencies and environmental hazards. In civics, we have a lot of data on voting, voter registration, as well as public services and spending. And then finally, we have the physical world category, which combines both environment and infrastructure indicators, so things like housing and land use as well. So when you go through the scroll, there's a couple of different module types. So like Alex mentioned, the bee swarm is one we use commonly, but one that we're really excited about that is a new addition to this iteration of Data2Go is change over time modules. These are only available at the community district level right now. So if you select the community district geography throughout the scroll, these will appear for a few different indicators. So in this case, this is the American Human Development Index from 2013 to 2022. When you look at this visualization, each of the gray lines in the visual represents a different community district. We have different points throughout time, so 2013, 14, 17, 18, and 2022. When you hover over each of these points, they'll show you the data value for that year and for that community district. In blue, we have the New York City average over that time period, and then the bolded line is the geography you have selected. We also have the ability to filter through by selecting, largest or smallest change buttons. Those will filter for the geographies that have the greatest change over that time period. So in this case, we've selected largest change. The community district that had the greatest improvement in the American Human Development Index over this time period was Long Island City, which has undergone a tremendous change over the last decade. If you click on smallest change, you can see here Tremont, Belmont, and West Farms in the Bronx, the well-being score actually fell by 5% between 2013 and 2022. Another type of data we have included in the Stat Explorer is point data, which we have points for thousands of entities like schools, libraries, and hospitals. So these also just appear in the scroll, and you can toggle on one of these things, and a bunch of different points will appear on the map. So in this instance, I've toggled on charter schools. If I zoom in closer on Bed-Stuy and select one of the points here, this is for Brooklyn Excelsior Charter School, you'll see the metadata that's affiliated with each point, and it varies by the type of point data you have selected, but in this case, because it's a school, we have data on student enrollment and proficiency rates of 3rd and 8th graders in English and math. So one thing that is really helpful to do with the point data is you have the ability to layer the point data over a different indicator. So in this case, I've gone back up in the scroll and I've selected the share of the white population and zoomed out. And it's really interesting for noticing geographic patterns at a glance. Alex mentioned our convention with color scheme. So in this case, the areas that appear in this lighter shade of yellow are areas where there is a lower share of white population. And it's interesting to notice that in the Bronx and in central Brooklyn, these neighborhoods that have low shares of white population appear to have a really high concentration of charter schools. And I'll just go back, but you can see when you have selected the charter schools in the histogram will count up the total number of points within each neighborhood. So you can see this area in Bed-Stuy I selected had 8 charter schools. It's really interesting for identifying sort of geographic concentrations of resources and noticing those patterns at a glance. There's another way to navigate the Stat Explorer, which is through search, which you can select in the top right-hand corner. There's a couple of different ways to search. So you can search just by typing in an indicator name. So here, I started typing in voter turnout. If you click on that, it will bring you to the place in the scroll where that indicator is, here in civics. You can also search by geography. So you can type in a zip code. Here I've typed in 11201. And if you select that, it will bring you to where that zip code is in the city. In this case, it's Brooklyn Heights. And then that is just actually the first view of Data to Go, and there's a lot more to cover. You can visit those different views by selecting this menu icon in the top left-hand corner, and they'll all appear down there. My colleague Tara will go through a few more of the views that we have, but first, just a quick aside for a bit of lore before we dive into even more data. So one thing we did as part of the revamp of Data to Go was host a couple of series of technical assistance data clinics. So we hosted the first one over this last summer, and they were for New York City nonprofits to help them learn how to use Data to Go to work with data and see how it can support them in their work. So one of our participants in the first session was Brooklyn Community District 2, which is downtown Brooklyn and Fort Greene. And as part of the data clinics, they worked on a project working with data from Data to Go and other sources and using some of the data visualization techniques we worked on in the class. And Brooklyn CD2, as part of their project, made basically a pitch that they should be the next community districts to have the rollout of Empire bins and trash containerization. They would be the second community district in the city where this happens. And amazingly, they were successful. And they very kindly invited us to join for the press release outside of Fort Greene Park, where former Mayor Adams announced that they would be deploying the Empire bins to downtown Brooklyn and Fort Greene. You can see they had these amazing and really hilarious Star Wars themed trash collection posters that featured notably Jabba the Rat. So my colleague Tara and I went. It was a great and really interesting event. And a couple months later, a new piece of media emerged, which was the Z-Way Eric Adams interview. And I don't know if any of you saw this, but it was a very hilarious interview. I watched till the end, of course. And they rolled the clip where Z-Way met Eric Adams for the first time. And I was looking at this video and I was like, this looks quite familiar. And I realized that Z-Way must have been walking her dog, pictured at Fort Greene Park. She says, "Oh, my dog hates rats too," in the video. And we put together that they first met outside of the press conference that I attended, where they announced the trash containerization pilot in Brooklyn CD2. So it was quite hilarious and amazing to have been involved in that in some small part. But now back to the data. I'll pass it off to my colleague Tara now.
All right. So everything that we've shown you back in the tool was actually just in that first view, as Kate mentioned. That was the Stat Explorer. So now we're moving into the second view that we have available. So this is actually the Neighborhood Explorer. While the Stat Explorer allows you to see a single indicator mapped across the city, the Neighborhood Explorer brings together a host of indicators into a single place. So similar to the Stat Explorer, we have the map and the histogram on the side here, but we're actually just focusing on a single neighborhood. In this case, we have Queens Community District 8 selected. We also have this little section here to kind of orient users to the page and the specific neighborhood that we have selected. So we include a unique illustration for each one. Here we have the globe from the World's Fair in Queens. And again, just a little sort of intro paragraph to the neighborhood. As before, we have the categories for indicators across the top. And then again, we just have a small selection of indicators from each category. So I'll just go ahead and click through so you can see what those look like. So for each category, we have this sort of condensed overview dashboard of indicators for that neighborhood. So just to kind of click through these. And then the last element to this neighborhood view that's really great is we also have the ability to create a custom dashboard. So it's a little bit cut off in the display, but it's over here in the top right corner. So this is an example of what a completed custom dashboard about young people could look like. So we've entered in data on youth employment, youth disconnection, school enrollment, child health outcomes like asthma, and so on. And it's really easy to add your own modules. You'll just click into here, and actually the next slide will walk you through how to do that. So you'll click Custom, Add Module. You need to give your module a name, and then you just search for all of the indicators that you'd like to add to that module, add them in, and then you'll click the Add Module button at the bottom, and then that gets populated on this page. And you can add as many modules as you'd like through this process. Another great element to this is that the URL for the site for the module that you're creating will be custom, so you can share that with your colleagues or anybody else so they can see the page of modules that you've created. So that is the Neighborhood Explorer view. The next view that we're going to look at is the Comparisons view. So this is great to compare two indicators. Here we are comparing commute time, long commutes, and high blood pressure. So we've got a similar sort of setup, but you'll see that the coloring is different here. This bivariate map color key orients you to how to read the map and the scatter plot. So in this example, areas where high blood pressure is high, but commute times are low, have this darker blue. If commute times are high, but high blood pressure is low, we have the darker red, and where both indicators are high, we have the darker purple. So that kind of orients you to how the map is being displayed, as well as the scatter plot on this side. Here we have it just in writing. So if you have a long commute time, you may not be surprised to see that there is a strong positive correlation between these two indicators. And we have a little explanation for what correlation is. Correlation is not causation, very important to point out. And we do also include the R value here for our fellow data nerds. So up on the top here, it's really easy to swap in the indicators that you want to look at. In order to do so, you just click into it. You can scroll through the list or just start typing the indicator that you'd like and select it, and then the map and scatter plot will update accordingly. So the last view that we are going to show you today is this one. This is the Demographic Explorer, and this is breaking down indicators by demographic groups, so by gender and by race and ethnicity. We only have a handful of indicators in this view, so it's not all 400. But here is an example of one. We have median personal earnings. So again, you're seeing the map and the histogram, and then we've brought back our favorite bee-swarm visualizations and broken it down by these demographic groups. So we see here we have median personal earnings, and we've selected the Upper West Side. So this first bee-swarm is going to be the distribution for all residents. We see that earnings on the Upper West Side for all residents is about $95,000. But as we start to move through the bee-swarms, we see how there is a lot of variation among demographic groups. So in the second bee-swarm, we have female residents, and we see that the range is actually shifted to the left. So it's shifted down for female residents of the Upper West Side. The earnings are about $83,000, which is about $10,000 less than for all residents of the Upper West Side. If we look at the third bee-swarm, which is male earnings, we're actually seeing the opposite. So the bee-swarm is shifted a little bit to the right. So it's shifted higher. Men on the Upper West Side have earnings of about $117,000. So that's nearly $34,000 more than their female neighbors. When we look at the range for Asian residents, we see that the bee-swarm actually has a much wider range. So the lower earnings are lower than for all New Yorkers, and the highest earnings are higher than for all New Yorkers. Asian residents on the Upper West Side earn about $119,000. And then as we go down below that, we have bee-swarms for Black and Latino residents. And we see that those bee-swarms are a lot more narrow and actually clustered on the lower half of the distribution, with earnings in the Upper West Side at about $45,000 for both groups. So this view is really interesting in its ability to kind of dig a little bit deeper rather than just looking at the neighborhood as a whole. And it really highlights that point that, for instance, we might think of the Upper West Side as a neighborhood of high earners. But when we actually break it down, we see that that's not necessarily the case for all of the residents of that area. So I know we just threw a bunch of information at you all, so we're happy to take any questions that you may have.
Hi, my name is Harshita, and I really like the presentation and the dashboard. They are really impressive. So I want to know which tech stack you have used for this, and like what is the development cycle. Like this dashboards are really impressive.
Great, that it's D3 and
React.
React.
Oh, React. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
We got a request from Paige to show how to do the custom dashboard again.
Sure. So that's going to be on the Neighborhood Explorer view. So when you go into the site, you start on the Stat Explorer, but if you're having trouble getting there, you'll go to the hamburger menu in the top left-hand side and click into the neighborhood view.
Curious about when data sources get updated from Krista.
That's a good question. Data sources get updated whenever they're updated, and we try to catch them when we can, but yeah, we pull a lot of data from the census, which is annual updates, but we do have a whole host of different sources that we pull from. We pull a lot from NYC Open Data, and some of those sources get updated more regularly. But we try to update the data annually, usually around the summer.
I have a question. This tool is really impressive. I'm just curious, like, how long did it take to develop? How many people were involved? It's, yeah, just a little background.
Sure. Alex, I don't know if you want to talk more about its inception, because this actually started 10 years ago.
It took us about a year and a half to develop the first iteration, and then 2.5 years to develop this most recent iteration. And yeah, I think that was that the extent of your question?
Also, like, how many people were involved? I mean, yeah.
Yes. Well, not too many more than who you see before you. We worked with a developer that we've been partnering with for 15 years, Cody in Hawaii, and colleague Rostin Wu, who's a designer in Los Angeles, and been our long-term design partners. So there were a couple consultants that we worked with, as well as some former staff, Kara and Rebecca, but basically a team of 5 to 6, and 2 consultants, more or less, and maybe a couple more interns. So small team. And yeah, I mean, Tara covered the update cadence. We typically shoot for the summer, and yeah, Vanessa, your question about the data dictionary, we actually got a question about that 2 or 3 days ago, and we'll work on sort of creating a simpler version of it that's more navigable. But I think the closest thing we have to that right now is if you go to the comparisons view, basically you'll get a scroll with a menu with all of the indicators in it. And that will, yeah, Tara's highlighted it there. So that can really be a great way to filter through all of the indicators organized by category. And Nicole, I see you asked for a video tutorial. I think maybe my colleagues might be answering these questions for you as I speak, but we do have a short tutorial on the site already, but it's in PDF form, and we'll share this video posted on our website, linking on our opening page so that we can have it for posterity. Augustine, I will get back to you on your question about how we measure success, but it's on a personal level. I think on a team level, it's if the tools we built are used by the people we designed them for and are used to help make New York a better place for its residents.
I have a question for the team.
Sure.
This is Jay London, and I'm curious about what the team thinks are the wise and underutilized areas for this tool for the profit and nonprofit sector. Wise and underutilized.
Good question. I think that the underutilized view is the one we're actually looking at right now, the connections view, just because it's a bit more, it has a steeper learning curve, but what it can really show is the relationship between, if you're trying to influence one outcome, it'll show you contributing factors, things that overlap. If you're trying to reach young people who are not in school, not in work, you might notice through this view that there's a high rate, in neighborhoods where there tend to be a lot of young people who are out of school and out of work, there tend to be a lot of people who are on Medicaid or are on SNAP, and that would maybe help program design so that you can reach young people at, through initiatives that reach those populations already. So that's kind of one way that we hope that people are using the tool, but we've just noticed with analytics that it's not as often used as the main tool. And then, we've noticed a couple downloads from for-profit entities, and we just hope that, they would use this to inform corporate philanthropy. That's what I think are, I don't know, Tara or Kate, if you wanted to add anything to those.
I'd be glad to hear if they do.
I was curious if you guys are considering expanding the data set, like to new areas, or adding like new portions of data or new population segments, and what maybe the plans are for building out the product further.
Yeah, I mean, we would love to do all of that, but we would have to work with partners. We're 100% project funded. So we have a sort of internal roadmap for new indicators that we would like to add in this upcoming summer. But to, sort of meaningfully add, 50 new indicators or 100 new indicators, we would want to partner with a philanthropy on that. And similarly, for expanding it to other areas of the country, we would love to roll this out in LA, for instance, in any city that would want it. We have actually been working with a hospital network in Santa Barbara County since I think 2016 to have a version of this tool, and we're working with them to update it, and that'll launch this year. So Santa Barbara and New York so far are the only cities that we've worked and developed this specific kind of tool for. And Anna, thanks for your question. Neighborhood View does not have congressional district or school district boundaries, although we would, again, that would be another thing that we'd be interested in adding support for, custom geographies and additional geographies like that. But we do look at congressional districts in our youth disconnection work, and some of our HDI work. And we do have a lot of special school district data, or data, I should say, from New York City Department of Education, that, we got through a lengthy data agreement process and have geocoded for the first time into community districts and neighborhood tabulation areas. So that's on our website. And Hassan, I think the PNG option might be grayed out. Hopefully this is what's causing the issue. If you fill in an email address, and even if you don't want to receive email, I think it just asks that people, fill in an email address, and then the PNG will download. If that's not the case, as with most tools, sometimes bugs emerge after long periods of hibernation. So let me know if that fixes it, please.
You mentioned, hi, I'm Jessie. You mentioned, things that you might want to do in the future, but obviously capacity is always a challenge. For those of us who are interested in this space, is there, I work at Columbia, but I know you mentioned partners from all over, are there opportunities for kind of supporting the maintenance of this? Is that something, or are you hoping to keep that really in-house? It's on my mind with this Open Data Week, right? And there's so many people kind of in this space wanting to lift up this work. So I guess is there anything that any like opportunities for collaboration or to help support your team keep this resource going?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we'd love to chat about that. So if you want, and I'm sort of stealing the thunder from the slides later, but you can just reach out to any of us. It's or to me, my email's on a later slide, which is just alex@measureofamerica.org. And all our emails are like that, Kate or Tara. And yeah, we're definitely, trying to find more, philanthropic support for maintenance, to operate something like this, even with a small team, it takes a lot of effort. So, but thank you very much for, asking about that. And
Thanks.
the chat. Yeah. Oh, great. I'm glad it's working, Hassan. And Dave, I see testing the heat complaints for your JanFeb. Interesting. Yeah, maps closely to where most evictions are happening on the Right to Counsel New York City site. Yeah, yeah, thank you for pointing that out. That's our hope, that this tool will allow people to see those kinds of connections.
I have a question about like the Measure America team in general. Like I'm curious, like everyone's like backgrounds and like what did everyone study and like how did they get to Measure of America?
Sure. So everyone on the team has quantitative and qualitative social science research experience. And yeah, that, we're a small team where everyone wears different hats. So, all of us developed some of the tooling for the site in R, which is a free statistical analysis program, and worked with our designer who built the tool in JavaScript and with React. But that's really, his domain, and of course with the web designer Rostin Wu. But yeah, we basically, since we are part of this Social Science Research Council, we're one of the more quantitatively focused teams here, and that's part of the background that we look for in our collaborators and colleagues.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Of course. So I'm going to suggest that we'll have more opportunity for Q&A, but that we begin the bingo. So Tara, would you like to kick off the bingo?
So now I know we've only got about 10, 15 minutes left, but we wanted to give you all the opportunity to try Data to Go out for yourselves. So we're going to play a quick little bingo. So the rules for this are pretty simple. All the answers on the next slide, which is going to be the bingo board, are going to be found using datatogo.nyc. And yeah, you're welcome to all join in if you'd like. We'll have an initial bingo winner if we can, and then just feel free to answer as many clues as possible in the time that we have left. And we're also here to help answer any questions as you're navigating the site. Just a reminder to be mindful of some questions asking for neighborhoods at the NTA level, and some will ask for CDs, so the community district level. I'll give you all a second to pull up Data to Go on your own devices if you want to play along. And then in a second, I'll move to our bingo board. And we'll also have some hints in there as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just move to the next slide. So here is our bingo board. So we have a little free space in the middle for the free Staten Island Ferry. But we invite you all to try out the tool for yourself and see if you can find the answers to these questions. If you're able to get 3 in a row, feel free to drop your answers in the chat. And again, we are also happy to help out with any questions. Okay, I think we have a bingo. Matt is our bingo winner. Congrats, Matt. But I saw a lot of other people getting some correct answers. So thank you all for playing along. Let's see. Okay. So thank you all for playing along with our bingo. And we have this QR code if you want to sign up for our mailing list. Alex, I'm not sure if there was more you wanted to say here. Sorry.
Hey, yeah, so I'm Alex. No, don't worry. And yeah, like I said earlier, we're happy to answer any questions. Even if you flood my inbox, my email's right there, alex@measureofamerica.org. And love to chat with you about questions you might have, or if you're interested in partnering on this, or if you have an audience in mind of 30 or so people, we would love to 30 and up have it host demo for your organization. So anyway, just feel free to reach out, and please do sign up for the mailing list, and we send actually mails really infrequently, I think once or twice a year, based on the most recent years. We're trying to bump that up a little bit, but you won't be spammed. And just thank you all for your time. And I'm going to kick it back over to Michael. So thanks for, staying with us for this long tour and to go.